This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with New York Red Bull Academy coach Chris Harmon. He discusses his under-12s recent victory in a tournament based out of Austin and what was learnt from all the other academies, how they focus on transitional play with it being ingrained in their coaching program, as well as the differences between the Barcelona and Red Bull way. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, please make sure you share it with friends and family. I hope you enjoy. Perfect. Good to go. So, Chris, really appreciate you jumping on and spending a bit of your time with me. I know we caught up a little bit off air there, but seems like Christmas break was all good. Bit of family time, bit of downtime away from the mad world that's football.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me. No, it's been good to kind of reset, recharge the battery for sure. See some family. But like I said before, I'm already itching to get back on the field and see the players and get back to the cold of New York and ready for the winter and the spring season to kick off here.
Perfect. So obviously you alluded to a little bit there with New York and whatnot, but for people that maybe haven't come across you or your work, do you just want to give us kind of a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what, I guess, why you've got into soccer your end, football our end, or and maybe a few stops on your journey coaching-wise, and then where you are at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I come from a big family, pretty blue collar area outside of the city. I come from a family of educators, and sports was always big growing up. So that was kind of, something we surrounded ourselves with and kind of connected through. I played soccer, every waking minute growing up. And then, ultimately, went to college, went to university in Virginia, Old Dominion University, where I played, which was a great experience for me. At that point in my career, in my life, all I wanted to do was play, and at that time I had an idea of, when I was done, I wanted to get into coaching. So I chose to go and study physical education. I thought that would be relevant, when I did, stop playing and things like that. So Old Dominion was an amazing experience for me. It's a bit of a mid-major Division I program, which means, at that time, things have changed a little bit, and now kind of most programs, recruit internationally. But at that time, especially for the mid-major, programs, they were pretty heavily international, which was, for me, unbelievable. Walking into that locker room and having guys from, all parts of the world, really speaking different languages, different cultures, mix was unbelievable, and something that, I was looking for. So I think that really kind of was, opened my eyes to, wow, this game really can bring you to different places and have you meet different people and give you experiences that, I would definitely not have had. So, had a pretty good career at Old Dominion, and then, like most, kind of chased the dream, tried to play, went overseas, was in Spain for a preseason with third division club Cornellà in Barcelona. So was there, bounced around different trials, USL teams, MLS teams. I did a stint with a USL team in Dayton, Ohio, and ultimately it was like everybody. I think you get to that point where you realize, it's just the ceiling, you've kind of hit it. And, I think that moment for me is a bit of a funny story. I was on trial with Orlando City at the time. They were just making the transition from USL to MLS, and we had a friendly against AS Roma, and, not expecting to even be rostered, and walk into the locker room, and my name's on the board to start, right? Michael Bradley, Tati, De Rossi, right, in the tunnel. And I'm just looking over, fresh out of college, going, yeah, there's no chance here. So, absolutely just chasing shadows. And I remember thinking at that point, walking off and getting the shepherd's hook at halftime, and just realizing, there's no chance here. But, again, I think quickly understanding, I want to be around this. I still want to be around the game. So an opportunity rose to get into college coaching, where I went to Florida Southern, a Division II school, where I kind of got my feet wet. And actually the guy that recruited me at Old Dominion, Ryan Snagowski, was the head coach there, and he was kind of getting his first start as a head coach. So, he gave me a lot of freedom, and I learned a lot kind of in that year. And I, just like everybody has their own story of, full-time hours, basically unpaid, all those things. And looking back, you go, man, those were some of the best times, when you had nothing, but you were literally just, you were just learning and kind of putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, having just stopped playing and then, transitioned into a coach, right? And you don't know what you don't know at that point. You're just learning. So, an opportunity then after that opened up to get back to my alma mater, Old Dominion University, where I worked on both sides. I was the director of ops with the women and the men's team, which was a really great experience. On one end, it was Alan Dawson, who's a Northern Irish coach who I played for. And then on the women's side was Angie Hind, who had spent times in the Scottish FA, assistant national team coach. So, I had really good mentors, and, ultimately ended up working for both. I did a year as an assistant on the women's side, which was something that, I'd never thought I would get into the women's game, but I do have a very, a mentality of different experiences are, I think is the best way to learn. And I learned so much in that year under Angie and Michelle Barr, who's, her assistant. And then I transitioned, did 2.5 years on the men's side, where, ultimately I thought that was going to be my pathway in coaching. I loved working with the older players. I loved being able to connect with them and really, at that time, we were kind of, transitioning in terms of we had a lot of good international players, but, it was kind of a goal of mine is I wanted to get good American players in there as well. So worked really hard. I had the opportunity to go and recruit. I was recruiting internationally, spent maybe 16 days in Europe, almost alone, traveling around, watching games, things like that, which ultimately was such an amazing experience, going to different clubs and then I got to the point, 3 or 4 years in at Old Dominion where I realized, I needed to perfect my craft. I felt, I was young, 24 at the time, 25. I had a good, some would say a good gig. I was a Division I assistant coach. But I just felt like a piece of, my craft, my career was missing. And I wasn't coaching enough, and I felt like, I was inadequate in that, and I wasn't doing the players justice. So I kind of had this fear of, man, I need to get out and I need to do more, and I need to get on the grass and I need to learn. Where I reached out to Sean McCafferty, who was the academy director at Barca Residency Academy. He had actually coached me growing up. He was in the Philadelphia area at the time, when I was a player, and I reached out and just said, hey, look, I'm looking for an opportunity, and he said, listen, I have a pre-academy team at the time, and basically they had the DA. It was a full residential program in Arizona. They had the top 3 teams, and then they had a couple, pre-academy teams which feeded into them. And I said, let me come out and see it. And I flew to Arizona, and man, there was only their first year that they were getting going there, and I was amazed. It kind of captured me in a way that I didn't expect. It was like being at a national team camp. These kids it's like a little mini getaway. They're all in dorms. They're all living together. They go to school together, they eat together, and then, they head out to the fields together. And then, as they're walking out to the fields, and again, this is, I don't know if you've ever been to Casa Grande. It's a really desolate area, but there's an academy kind of based in the middle of the desert, where these players, they come from all over the country. They leave their homes, they leave their families, and they live there full time. And it's truly a place where that you just immerse yourself in football and in the game. And, seeing that, I knew, this was a place where I could come and learn and really graft and perfect my craft. The Barca methodology, the Barca, tie-in, the affiliation for me was unbelievable. They had two full-time technical directors that are on site, and I think the stipulations are they've had to have been in La Masia for a certain amount of time. So they're proper coaches, and their job, they didn't coach teams. Their job was just to oversee the coaches and ensure that the methodology was being presented in the right way. And for the first 9 months, I actually lived in the dorms, because I just wanted to, be on the field. I wanted to be around the coaches. I wanted to, again, just learn. And that first 9 months was really difficult. Having come from the time I was living in Virginia Beach, I was close to family, close to friends, a place that I was very familiar with, to all of a sudden kind of being plunged into, the desert, really, not really knowing many people. And all I did was watch sessions and coach sessions. And, during that time, I got my 10,000 hours on the grass, where it was prepare, execute, reflect over and over and over again. And, that's where I learned the importance of preparation, the importance of small details, and how everything plays a part into what, the final outcome. What you want, what you put into it is what you're ultimately going to get. So I learned so much there under the Barca guys, under Sean, under the other coaches. Was there for 3 years. Eventually, the next year, I ended up taking the 17s, the top team. The year after that, I transitioned into a leadership role where I was the assistant academy director. Sean had since moved on. Jed Quinn was and still is the academy director there. He gave me some more, again, leadership roles. I was not only just on the field with the 17s, that group, who had some top quality players, but I started to learn the ins and the outs of how to run a program like that. How the importance of not just being on the field, but everything else that goes into running the program. And I learned so much during that year. After that year kind of again came to an end, I felt like I was ready to kind of take the next step. I was ready to get back to the East Coast as well. I'd been away from home for a very long time, so at that point I was able to transition. Sean McCaffrey had moved on to New York Red Bulls, so where he's now the academy director, and to where I started in August. So it's been a couple months here. I took the 12s initially, and then one of the 14s, one of the coaches had stepped away, so I had actually taken on two teams. So I've been taking the 12s and the 14s, and it's been full steam ahead. And again, we can get into the Red Bull stuff here, but kind of a long-winded answer there. Apologies for that, but a lot to digest. But again, it's super happy. Red Bull has exceeded expectations, and being in this environment, top players, top coaches, has been unbelievable so far.
I think a really nice overview there, and obviously gives us loads of stuff to talk about, but also a bit of an idea of how people's journeys fluctuate in terms of experiences and whatnot. So if we start with where you are now, obviously New York Red Bull, which is a pretty well-known club, both in the US, but also kind of worldwide. I guess from your perspective, what drew you to the club in the first place?
Yeah, I think their reputation for player development, their reputation for playing young players, working in an academy where you can see firsthand there's a blueprint that they're going to trust young players. They're going to give them the opportunity. So ultimately, if you do your job at the academy level, the players are going to get the opportunities. There is a pathway. Something that I think I was missing at Barca. I felt like, the players, they got to a point and they were ready. They were ready to take that next step. and to have this pathway now has been so exciting. Again, I've only been there a couple of months, but talking to colleagues and other coaches that, guys that they had 2-3 years ago are now making transitions in the second team into the first team and breaking in. Uh, Something that really excites me because, if you're a player, you're always thinking, what's next? How do I take that next step? And when it's there, when you're in the same facility, when you're day in and day out, training, there's days where my U12 team is training on a turf and the first team could be training right next to us, and to have that experience for our players and, giving the players a water break and them not moving an inch and just sitting there and watching the first team, it's an unbelievable experience for them. And for me, it's something that, again, it's exciting, and really drew me towards Red Bull. And then the people, having worked for Sean before, I knew the type of standards that he upholds, the quality that he brings and he expects from everyone around him. And I knew it was going to be a place that I could continue to grow, gain more experience, learn from others. And ultimately, hopefully take that next step in my development.
In terms of culture, environment, obviously each club tries to set out what they want their culture to look like, both for staff and for players. What is the strap line for you guys? What I guess what before you went into the building, what did people say to you the culture environment was like? And then when you went into the building, what did you feel? How did you feel when you stepped through the doors, and what did you see from your own perspective?
Yeah, from a culture standpoint, what I had heard in the reputation, going into it from the people who've been in it before, had mentioned that it's such a well connected organization. From the academy to the first team. And I think COVID unfortunately has made that difficult. But it's something, having had conversations with Sean and it's something they definitely want to get back to. It was a situation where we're able to watch first team trainings, we're able to watch second team trainings. That the academy coaches had access to everything. Simon Nee, who's been in New York Red Bulls organization for, I think, 15 years. He talks about Jesse Marsh, taking him in for a whole week, having him watch sessions, having him in for video sessions. Chris Armish having the coaches in for anything. Just being so open and seeing that connection. Is something that I can already experience, even with the restrictions and how open they are. We're watching the first team sessions and the coaches are coming over and talking to us. And then ultimately, the other thing is that they're an organization that prides themselves on learning. They do tons of coach education for the surrounding clubs. They have youth programs below the academy, which I think it employs 180 coaches, and they do coach education every week. And I was only with the club for 2 months at the time, and I was running a session on our field for 70 youth programs coaches in the area, mic'd up and doing those things. And it's just something that it's not just a one-way street where we try and get above, we try and give back to the areas, the surrounding areas. So it's definitely an organization that prides itself on continuing to the development and learning of the staff members, which has been unbelievable.
When you stepped through the door, did you feel kind of that connection between staff? Obviously, I know you mentioned it being challenging because of not necessarily being able to see the first team because of COVID and all that. But did you feel the connection as you're walking up and down the hallways, or when you're on calls with people, or when teams are taking sessions? Could you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the staff has been unbelievable. And one thing that is also apparent, there's only 5 academy teams. There's only 5 coaches. And coming from a club where there was 10 of us plus directors, and it was such a bigger staff where it's little bit more of a close knit staff, and in the academy level, and everybody's just so willing to help, and everybody is so eager to I think that the culture that's instilled is the players are the most important. And that's something that Sean talks about all the time. We won't do anything if it doesn't benefit the players. So having that as kind of your gold standard of, does this help the players? Yes. Okay. Then it doesn't matter what it means for the staff. It means we're going to find a way to get it done. And again, the resources that Red Bull has at the academy level is unbelievable, right? They're always thinking of how can we improve? How can we get the best out of the players? So, we have youth program staff that come up and assist us during training sessions. Every training session you have at least two people, two coaches on the field, sometimes three. You have kind of a check and challenge process as well, where we're every day we're coming back in, and when we're putting our sessions up on the projector, and you're talking about it. You're talking about what went wrong, and you're having immediate feedback from guys who are there, right? And we're videoing each training session, and again, you're getting checked and challenged every step of the way. Which for me, there's no better way. It's the reflection piece has to be there, or else you'll just kind of brush it on the table and move on. So, having that support of the other staff really has helped me, kind of feel comfortable, right away, having stepped in and being new. But just the culture of, again, what's best for the players. And ultimately, if we're better versions of ourselves, if we're, taking ideas from each other, and we're all come from different backgrounds and different experiences, if we're putting the best product of us on the field, then the players are going to benefit. So it's the culture of, again, player first has definitely been instilled since day one.
Linking on to the players then, so if you take your U12s, for example, because I know obviously you've worked with them during the first part of the season, what would their working week look like? So what would they actually be doing from a training perspective? And then how do you individualize your sessions or your support to be able to, help that specific player that needs it, or you feel like could do with more challenge?
Sure. So we train 4 times a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So we have an off day in the middle of the week on Wednesday. And obviously for the 17s, that has a little bit more implications for physical load and things like that. With the 12s, we plan our week in a sense of Mondays for all the teams are more of an IDP, individualized training load, where we are really trying to focus in on, where maybe the 17s are focusing in on one player. Maybe they're planning the session around one player, right? And a center back and one action, something like that. Where the U12 level, we individualize it in different maybe position groups. Okay, today we're going to work on center backs carrying the ball into the mid, whatever individualized action we can, or different types of turning in the midfield, right? So that would be a little bit more on a Monday. We're getting into a lot of detail, of the individual player, of the individual action, and we're getting a lot of repetition. Tuesday would be a little bit what we call a philosophy day, where we're implementing some of our philosophy with bigger numbers, be a little bit more of, focus on the team. Off day on Wednesday. Thursday, same thing, bigger space, bigger numbers. Again, another philosophy day where we're focusing in on, whatever point we're at in our periodization, in our annual plan. So again, more team oriented focusing. Fridays, a little bit for the older teams would be a little bit more of a match preparation team. For the 12s, we do on a Friday, we call it finalization. So we're doing everything going to goal. We talk about Fridays being the most fun session that we can put on. We want goals, 1v1 actions, defend inbox defending, crossing and finishing, and we talk about, again, going into, usually we'll have the games on the Saturday, how much fun, how many actions to goal can we show to the players to have those behaviors emerge over and over and over again. And then, a game on a Saturday, recovery on a Sunday, and then it kind of starts over from there. Like I said, with the 12s, not so worried about the physical load, where the older teams are tapering off as they get closer to the games, we carry a squad of 22, 23 players. We have 4 staff for that team. So when we do those individualized days, we can break it up into circuits, right? We can do, I can take a functional group, somebody else can take 6 players, and really hone in on the details. We can get as creative as we want. And for that, the Mondays for me, was really new. Wasn't something we did a lot when I was at Barca. At Barca, they really stayed away from the individualized actions and training, where I think at Red Bull it's a really good blend of the team and still focusing in on the individual.
Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll pick up on the Mondays and the Fridays, because I think those for me are particularly interesting. So when we're looking at those individualized actions, how are they decided for each player? Do they have individual plans which are set out? And if they do, what format or template do they use in order to facilitate what's being worked on? Or is that kind of a reaction to what's come over the weekend?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of freedom. We work in 2-week blocks, but we do have a lot of freedom from our director to implement and maybe adapt to certain things. But again, with the state, with in mind, is we want to make sure we hit everything in our annual plan, right, and not being so reactionary to a weekend for a U12 game, right? So I think the individualized, as we get to our 15s and 17s, we actually have a staff member who's literally his role is he assists the second team, and he also just works with IDPs, and that's a little bit more individualized in the sense for the 15s and 17s. For our top talents, they're getting those repetitions of areas of their game that we've identified, right? And whether that's before training, whether that's the activities we do in training, maybe constraining them individually. So, I would say in the development phase, 12s through 14s, it's not so much about the specific individual. It's more about maybe the actions that the individuals will see repeatedly, and how can we expose them to different pictures. When they transition to 15, 17, okay, now we're talking about players who we're seeing and saying, okay, they have the potential to jump to the second team. What's their strength? What sets them apart? What's the reason? Why are they going to get signed? We have that conversation a lot. What's their strength? Ultimately, that's the first team is going to go, yeah, we need that, right? How do we continue to develop that? How do we work on areas of the game that they need to improve on? And that's where maybe it's a lot more individualized, if that makes sense. With the 12s, we do individualized meetings a lot, and we talk about the areas, but it's not as much this player needs this, right? Because we want to expose them at that age to a variety of things, right? And still with it in mind, that we don't know how they're going to develop, right? We don't know if we're developing them as a center back if they're not going to grow, and we need to so we're still trying to develop them as footballers, and decision makers first and foremost, with the mentality and with the behaviors of a Red Bull player, right? I think that's the biggest thing for me, is how can I make sure when they go to U13 they have the behavior of a Red Bull player, right? The aggressiveness, the decision making part in possession. How do they have all those pieces when they're ready? Because ultimately you don't know what they're gonna turn out to be, when they're age 10 and 11.
So could you give us an example of maybe a Monday session that you've done? So maybe dig back to just before Christmas, if you can remember that far. So maybe a Monday session that you delivered, and what the topic was, and then how you actually sculpted the session in and around that.
Yeah. So one we've introduced maybe different types of receiving in the midfield. So it would be something where, again, at this point we have a lot of staff, so we want to utilize the individual aspect. We want to work in small groups. So maybe the first activity would be introducing the different types of turning without the ball. Obviously, the perception piece, the scanning, is so important at this age, and instilling the checking of the shoulders and how often they're doing it. So, turning across the body, receiving across the body. So, identifying 3 or 4 different, areas that we really want to hone in on, showing them that, maybe in an unopposed for 10 minutes, right? Which is, I would say 98% of what we do is opposed, but at that age, we do think that it's important to maybe show some of these areas unopposed, and not for 30 minutes, not, it's maybe 10 minutes, of where we're showing the action, we're breaking down the action, and then basically the next activity would be moving into, we would call it, slight pressure, delayed pressure, where they're still executing that turn, that receive, but with slight pressure. And we're really big into trying to expose into different pictures of pressure coming from different areas, right? I think there's data out there that says the amount of times you actually receive the ball with pressure coming straight on is so low compared to this side, compared to the, receiving pressure from the back. So trying to expose them to as many different pictures with pressure as possible, and then, going into the next activity where it's more game like, where it's, still maybe slighter numbers. We try to keep the numbers low where we have a lot of those actions, and again, and kind of progressing it, and using different constraints, to bring those behaviors out. If we're trying to, work on receiving the ball across and receive the ball with one foot, play with the other, we call it catch and play. We're big on using vocabulary that is linked to a specific action. Okay, so catch and play, ultimately receiving the ball with one foot, playing with the other, and trying to switch the point of attack. Okay, so in maybe our next activity, we want to use certain constraints. We want to lay down vertical lines. The ball has to travel from, it doesn't have to. Try to use a term we say is never say never, never say always, but incentivize those actions, incentivize those behaviors. So you get extra points if you're able to move the ball from, one area to another, and you're almost tricking the player to work on those actions that you just showed them. So that would be, an example of how we can kind of layer it in. Lesser numbers, more individualized, a specific action at the U12 age group, and then how can we layer it into, more game specific, more decision making, and sometimes we'll do an IDP where it's right away, it's under, we add pressure, so it's not so much pattern work. It's not so much, we try to take the yellow mannequins out of it, and we use a lot of rondos, positional games in our style to get those behaviors to emerge.
And does that get then highlighted for the game on a Saturday? So would you look to use that topic as a point of emphasis or point of success for the group on the Saturday? And if so, what type of, not constraints, but reward systems would you put on them for the game to say, well, actually, you worked on this on Monday, you've done it really well on the Saturday, and here's the reason why?
Yeah, and at the older age groups, we use a lot of KPIs. At the younger age groups, we do KPIs, but a lot of objectives, and KPIs will be directly linked to where we are in our periodization. For sure, different targets we want to hit, and maybe it's an individualized target, right, where we're just pulling over, maybe the 2 or 3 players that may, experience this, and really was the activity or the IDP was tailored towards, and just having a quiet word with them and say, listen, we'll go back after and we'll break it down and we'll look at it, but let's see, how many times you're able to execute, the areas that we worked on in training. Sometimes it's a more, in a philosophy day, we are working on, our, pressing and our counter pressing behavior. How many times can we win the ball in the attacking half? Things like that. And, broad strokes, and not getting too bogged down with stats and things like that. But little things we can do, and little KPIs we can incorporate to kind of give them the reminder. And then, on game day, we try to we try to give them the first half to figure out their problems, right? And if there's certain things we can help with on, from the sideline, we will. But really, that's what halftime's all about, right? Is for us to try to see if we can pull out some of the things we're seeing from them, and really have them find the solutions. It's not so much, trying to fix it from minute one, right? We want them to struggle, and we always say, it's difficult for us to get competitive games a lot, right? Because we're pulling from the best players from the area. So when we get into a game where the players are struggling early on, we want to sit back and watch and see which players respond, and see which players are trying to solve the problem, because that's where they're going to learn, right? It's the scoreline doesn't matter, right? The games that we lose, you're going, how can we get that team back on the schedule? The teams that are close games that show you different pictures, you're going, that man, that was what an experience for our players. We took the 12s to a tournament in Austin. We do one event where we travel with the U12s, and we took them to this event in December, and it was all MLS academies. It was hosted by Austin FC, Dynamo were there, LA Galaxy, Inter Miami, Colorado, Houston, and us. And it was such an unbelievable experience for the players, because each game presented a different problem and something that they haven't seen, and exposing them to the different cultures and the different backgrounds of how styles of play, of how different teams play, right? LA Galaxy, how they played as opposed to Austin, right? And I won't mention who played different styles, but we go into one game, and we're seeing a low block at 9v9, and I'm going, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. And it's not so often where you see that at that age, and you're sitting back and going at halftime, all right, what's the problem here? Okay. And how do we find the solution? And being tactically adaptable is a big term we use. We want to play like Red Bull, but if the team doesn't allow you to play like Red Bull, then okay, now we want to produce players that now have to find solutions and ultimately implement a different style, because in a low block, there's no space in behind. It's hard to play vertical. Perfect. Okay, what are the solutions? Where's the spaces? So that experience for us, and for the players to see, each game is a different training session, and having that experience was so good for the players to see.
We will touch on that, because that's one of the areas I wanted to talk to you about anyway. But just on what you said there, you mentioned kind of a Red Bull style. So what is the Red Bull style? What would we expect to see from your team? And then I guess the next question off the back of that, you also mentioned the tactical flexibility or adaptability, whatever you want to call it. How do you go around encouraging your group to have that, and how do you work with the group so they have that flexibility in a game or in training or whatever that looks like?
Yeah. Well, having come from a Barca methodology to the Red Bull philosophy, in some areas they're kind of on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. But for me, the non-negotiables for what a Red Bull team looks like, it needs to be high tempo, aggressive, forward defending, high pressing, all these kind of the buzzwords to when you show up to the field, you need to go, wow, that's a Red Bull team. They're bursting at the seams with aggression and how quickly they play, how bullish they are without the ball, how willing they are to press. And I mean, having been here now and see the demographic of players, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's fit for this type of culture, this type of kid that we have that walk through the door. They're winners. They want to compete. Like, these 11, 10-year-olds, like I've never seen. I didn't even know that at that age you could have so many players that are just, again, they're just little men, right? That just wanna tackle, compete, win, and fight and scrap, and I think that's all well and good and perfect. And of course that's what we want. Okay. We have a term that we use, it's called 100 to 70. And I think that's maybe the shift since Sean has taken over Red Bull Academy. It's okay. We've won the ball. Great. Now here's the area where we need to be better. And of course, Red Bull philosophy, we want to hurt the opponent. We want to score in 10 seconds. That's the golden rule. We want to win the ball. We want to win the ball high. And we want to score within 10 seconds. If we can do that, amazing, right? I think it's the most effective way of playing. But what if the opponent doesn't allow that, right? And I think this is where we're starting to develop players who are more adaptable and understand the modern game. That what if a team takes away that space, right? So for us, a Red Bull player still has to make the right decisions. It's not go forward at all costs. Maybe the right decision to hurt the opponent is a release pass or relief pass to backwards, right? And I think that's where the development and the changing of the philosophy at the academy level is starting to occur. Because again, we want players, and somebody looks at a Red Bull player, they want to have all of those things I talked about, but are they good footballers? Well, have to be good footballers, because in the modern game, you can't, you have to have all those things, right? So I think with Sean's experience, having been at Barca, having, been at different areas as well, he understands that, how can we get the most complete player? And again, not forgetting the Red Bull philosophy, because it's unbelievable, and it really does, produce, a type of player that fits our player profile of the area we're in. But also now, how can we continue to develop players who are good decision makers, who can play quickly, who have the ability to find, those difficult passes, but also make decisions when they're not on. So,
and how do you work with them on that? Because I'd imagine if you're playing, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the games where you're the stronger opposition, you're able to win the ball back and penetrate, I'd imagine, quite a lot of the time. Whereas playing against teams that either equally match to you or come with a different style, that then poses a problem that your players probably don't experience from a week-to-week basis. So how do you prepare them for those type of events or those type of tournaments or games? What type of things do you implement in training that allows them to go, actually, I've got some level of understanding of how to tackle this, and this is the way we could go as a group to try and get some success?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think it comes with different ways that we can constrain our training sessions. And it's something that, we do a lot. We do in terms of, okay, we want to break down a low block. We want to, in a mid block, where's the space? Okay. And getting the players to understand by our constraints, by not even maybe, telling the team in possession, but constraining the defending team and saying, you're going to go out and press like this. You're going to play in this formation. Again, different things that we can do to implement to give our players different pictures. And that's something that we talk about all the time. They need to see different pictures. And then video is huge, with, obviously the older players more importantly, but still, we show pictures to the 12s and we just present it in maybe different ways, and going, okay, in this situation, where's the space? Okay, the space is in beyond. Okay, maybe that's an area where we can look to exploit. Okay, we've won the ball. This team has taken the space away. Where's the space now? Where can we occupy? Where can we have, our players occupy? What are the best spaces to occupy? That maybe we need to be more patient, right? We need to be a little bit more patient in possession, and we need to move the opponent first. We use a term, attract or attack. Are we attracting, right, man? Attracting means we need to maybe play a little bit more. We need to circulate the ball more. We need to attract, right? And we talk about it all the time with our 12s. How do we attract pressure? Okay, the types of passes we give to our teammate, the information that we give to our teammates, staying on the ball, right? Maybe probing, coming into the midfield with the ball as a center back to attract pressure, to now create a 2v1. Now where's the new space? So again, giving them different solutions or giving them different problems. So the solutions are there, and then asking them and then showing them, right? And, in the way that we coach, we hate to stop the training. We hate to stop the training. The worst thing we can do is a big freeze, right? It's the worst thing as a player. right? And everybody who was a player knows that this guy, okay, now he's going to talk for 2-3 minutes, and now I'm not playing, right? So how do we get those behaviors to emerge in the training session without having to always stop it, and then reflect, right? When they're getting a drink, talking about, well, what were some of the problems that we saw? Okay, well, this team, and maybe we had a constraint where we laid a line, and maybe the back four couldn't step, right? So they were in a compact shape the whole time. Okay, the spaces was in front of them. Okay, so we had to move them, we had to entice them, we needed to play maybe in, then to go out, right? So just little things that we can do, repeatedly over and over and over again. And again, and you would think our players, because of our philosophy, and it's true, they see a lot of high press, and we think it's great because they learn that they have to play out of that. Okay, but what happens when they don't see that, right? So trying to give them different pictures, and really using different constraints to have that come out without giving them the solutions. We hate it when you walk into a training session, the coach goes, okay, this is what we're going to work on. This is the objective. You've already given them the solution. Here's the rules, go and play. Okay. And then layer in the constraints that will give different behavior. They figured it out. Okay. Now layer in a new constraint. They were on the brink of, this is easy. Now the constraint's different. So, in our methodology and in our methods, we can really try to bring out different behaviors and expose them to different styles of play.
I guess looking onto that tournament then, and this could be used in training as well. When you were going into that, how did you frame this tournament for the group? So was this here's the teams we're going to be playing against, this is the styles they like to play, or was it a very much we're just going to go into each game and see what that presents us? And what was the format of the tournament itself? Did you play every team, or was it a knockout, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so for us, it's always about us going into any game, even in the 17s. It's how well can we want other teams to adapt to us, right? And again, then there's going to be some in-game adjustments. But for us, the U12 level, it was how well can we play as as a Red Bull team. And again, at the U12 level too, that means we're going to be good footballers. We want possession. We want to pin the opponent in. We want to find the spaces. We want to create chances. We want to press. So it was all about us. Going into something like that, it was also okay. How can we expose them to what it's going to be like for them further down the line? And what does it look like to travel as a Red Bull player, to hold themselves to professional standards? So we didn't talk about the opponent once, and maybe we would do, video sessions before each game, but the video sessions were just, more of a formality to get them in that, they felt like pros. They're walking in and go, man, this is amazing, and the clips we're showing is of us, doing things well, and really giving them the pictures of this is, if we play well, this is what we look like, right? And then we're going to see different styles and different problems, but we need to be able to figure that out and be adaptable as we go. And we played in it was 2 groups, so it was 2 groups of 4. You played 3 games, and then there was a final, and it was unbelievable. After we played LA Galaxy the first night, and we bring the players back into the hotel afterwards, and we're in the meeting room, and as a staff we decided what an opportunity, because of what we've seen. We talked about how the players talk to the hotel staff. So we didn't even talk about the game. We didn't even, it was an opportunity for us. It was a learning moment for them it was the first time they'd ever been in a hotel, and their parent wasn't there saying, hey, I need a room key, or I need this, so it's such a learning experience for them off the field as much as it was on the field, that it was, it was an opportunity for us to really, really show them, what it's like to be a Red Bull athlete, and to travel, and how to hold yourself in a professional way. And then, I think we we won 2 games, we drew a game, and then we played Atlanta United in the final, and we won. But it wasn't, again, it wasn't about the wins or the losses. It was about the experience, and seeing different styles of play and how we could adapt to that.
And could you see the differences from academy to academy, or like culture to culture? Because like you said, like we said beforehand, at the moment in New York it's freezing. We watch the Buffalo Bills at the weekend; it's snowing and stuff, which I'd imagine has a certain type of you have to be resolute to be able to go outside in that weather and train and stuff. Whereas in LA, it's different because you can go down, it's nice and warm, and I imagine it'd be nice by the beach and all that type of stuff. So not saying one's better than the other, but do you see the differences from academy to academy? And did the players see that when they were looking at the other teams playing? Did they notice, oh, actually they play different to us, or they act different to us?
Yeah, I definitely saw it, and having worked on the West Coast as well, it's a different type of player for sure. So the styles were definitely different, and some of the philosophies, absolutely. You can see that they're trying to bring out certain behaviors, but again, I think everybody does such a good job at the MLS academy level with those ages. They understand that we're producing footballers, and I think one thing that was apparent is that every player was technically sound. Every player, you can tell, had been exposed to, training in a professional environment where they have to make decisions and things like that. So I would say that, for us, it was most apparent in the way that our boys counter-pressed and pressed. Even though we were very good on the ball, we scored a lot of goals. We had a lot of the possession in a lot of the games. But I think, some of the other teams are going, man, it's the behavior of your players was really different. And it's just, again, like you said, the type of player we attract is they're like little men who just want to compete, and they want the ball, and they, it was really apparent for me is that the mentality is really different, right? We played LA Galaxy, and they have players who are super comfortable on the ball, can get out of pressure, and you're going, man, that kid has it. A few of those kids really, really are just influenced, they influence the game in such a beautiful way. And then, different styles. It's definitely a little bit more difficult in the 99 in the half field to truly, there's a lot more stoppages of play, and it's a little bit more difficult. But it was definitely apparent. But in terms of the players recognizing it, I think they did a good job when probed. When they were there, they were just loving life. They just wanted to play. And it's a little bit more difficult at 10 and 11 years old. We brought four players who played a year up. So we had 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds. That again, it's maybe not their first instinct to think, how is the opponent playing and things like that. But when probed and when asked, they got it. They understood. And going out into the second half is really how we judge. Okay. How do they take the information in and apply, some of the differences that the opponent's giving us a different solution? How can they apply, what we spoke about? And we were really impressed. It was an unbelievable experience.
And how do you embed those behaviours in? Like you've mentioned there, particularly the counter pressing, the pressing is big for you guys. I'd imagine, although a lot of the kids will do it because that's what they want to do, you're going to get the occasional ones where it's not their bag. Like you got a Pogba at United, I'm not sure is too keen on it. Being a Spurs fan, I know Dele Alli definitely isn't too keen on it at the moment.
Sure.
But how do you go around maybe getting those outliers who it isn't their first thought or isn't their super strength to do that, to then buy into the group philosophy?
Yeah, and we do such a good job at the organization level that our pre-academy starts at, we have U10 and U11, and then the youth programs feed into that. And our pre-academy, they do such a good job where we're, our U12 and U13 staff is almost an extension of the pre-academy. So really it's U9 through U13. And we're implementing the same behaviors where we're sharing ideas of, okay, this is the type of player we want to see when they walk through our academy. When they're U12, this is the type of player. These are the non-negotiables that they have to have. And if you start doing that at U9, U10, U11, and implementing this behavior, it's easy by the time they get to U12, right? And we do things like, it's a constant. Counter pressing is a constant. Certain non-negotiables we have is a constant every single activity. So basically, it's getting to a point where we're in the beginning we're implementing constraints. Okay, you lose the ball. The team that just won the ball, every pass that they connect, they get a point. So if you just lost the ball and you're watching the opponent connect goals, your mind's going to think, we have to get that ball back, right? Or if they're able to dribble out of the, different things that a lot of people use. But if you're using that in every single activity and you're incentivizing those moments, it becomes a behavior. And it becomes a behavior into the point where at U15, maybe you don't even need those constraints because the environment is going to push, the players are going to push that environment, and it becomes a non-negotiable that if a player doesn't do it at training, they'll get eaten alive. The players have so much control over those things that it makes coaching easy, right? If you're able to implement that at a young age and it carries itself across. When I took over the 14s, if a player wasn't counter pressing, I didn't have to say a word. It's so instilled in them that the players, they're getting on them, and it's we use things like, first off, giving the ball away is irresponsible. It's unacceptable to give the ball away. But if you do, you better have a response. And if you don't, again, that's going to be, I think it's, each club has an area of the game that they want to really, excel in and put a lot of point of emphasis on. That's one of ours because we want to have the ball back. We ultimately want the ball. So if we lose it, we want to be able to win it back immediately. And those behaviors mixed in with the type of profile of some of the athletes we have here, coming through the doors at 13, 14-year-old, I didn't see the team that I have now with the 14s where I've been working with. They're bigger than the 17s and more athletic than the 17s I had at Barca. And I'm going on the West Coast, right? It's just a different profile of player. And again, when you mix that in with these behaviors, it becomes a lot of fun to work.
Affected the way that you've coached or you coach?
It's affected, yeah, because I think I also have a lot of value to add in terms of how can we improve the players in possession. So, for sure, I think being able to, we talked about the 100 to 70, that aspect. Okay, now how can we make better decisions once we've won the ball? How can we have better structure so when we do lose the ball, okay, we're in a better area to go and win and counter press. So, yeah, I think so. And just being at Red Bull, it has given me, where I was before, Barca doesn't believe in transitions. It's not even an aspect of they have two moments. They either have the ball or they don't. And now I'm learning and I'm thinking about these moments and being able to implement that. I just feel like a more well-rounded coach. And it's kind of given me another aspect in my arsenal and toolbox as a coach. And also it gives it, I would say until I got here, I didn't really necessarily know that the technical aspect of against the ball, the ball recovery, they go into such detail here that it's the same thing that you can implement with the ball, you can implement without the ball. When you bring those together, you really you're trying to develop a well-rounded, complete player, which, yeah, it's been really eye-opening. I've learned a lot from my colleagues, and watching and failing, and going back and sitting in those rooms in the check and challenge rooms, and going, man, that didn't work. Okay, what didn't work? How can we fix it? I think being humble it's an attribute that I've always come easy to me. But it stems from an area where I want to constantly learn. Failing is good because I know I can learn from it. So it's been an experience. It's been difficult, but it's been really rewarding as well.
In the Barcelona side, why don't they focus, or why don't they believe in that transitional piece?
Yeah, well, first off, it's 90% with the ball. It's literally if you don't have the ball and you're in that philosophy, then you're doing something wrong. So for them, it's either we have the ball or we don't have the ball. And when we have the ball, it's similar. It's we're going to be in a better structure while we're having the ball. The longer we have the ball, we're in a better structure. So when that ball turns over, now we don't have the ball, we can win it back, right? So it's much more patient, much more methodical. And again, it's like transitions are their enemy. They want the ball. They have the mentality of when we don't have the ball, they're suffering. They're suffering, and then when we have the ball, they're punishing. They're really trying to move the opponent. And I think that's the biggest difference is we win the ball here. Okay, how can we hurt the opponent? Which, I makes a lot of sense to me, right? How can we hurt the opponent? But Barca, it's more we need to connect the first pass so we can find our structure. The next pass, how we move the opponent. And at the youth level, having been in college coach and recruited and seen games at the top level for years, when I got to Barca, I hadn't seen a youth team play like that. To really impose their way in possession. That team that Sean was the coach was U17. They had top players: Matthew Hoppe, Julian Araujo, Caden Clark, Bryce Duke. I mean, they had national team players on that team, and they had the ball in the opponent's half, and they had it the whole game. And I'm going, man, I've never seen anything like this. So to be able to now take a lot of that and help our players and improve our players, and then still have the piece of when we don't have the ball, everybody's all in. It's a scary ingredient. I think it's been a lot of fun to see, how the players are adapting to both sides of ball recovery and in possession. It's been really exciting, and then not only that, and then the opportunity for the players to go and implement that and be challenged and play with the second team. I think Red Bull 2, their average age was 19, right? So, it gives them the opportunity to go and prove themselves, and it's such a great tool for us to, okay, let's see how they do, and they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle, and we're going to watch them struggle, and we're going to help them, and then slowly but surely you'll see them. King Clark, right? He was with Red Bull 2, and he struggled in the beginning, and then he started scoring goals, and then he gets to, opportunity with the first team. That's a success, and it's not all. Sure, if you ask Caden, those first couple of games, it was probably frustrating. So having the pathway definitely helps. It gives the players the long-term, blueprint, and gives us the opportunity to really push them.
Perfect. So last question for me, which is, who is the best player or coach you've worked with or against, and why?
Whoa, man, put me on the spot here. Best coach I've worked with. Well, I've definitely been influenced by a lot of people, and I think my experiences. I always say that my experiences are really what have shaped me. I've met in the college game, Angie and Alan Dawson. I really learned the aspects of how to manage programs, how to manage teams, and then getting into player development and watching Sean McCafferty, watching the Barca guys, Camilo Esperanza, Juanma Mena, the two Barca guys, and Xavi Bravo, how they that develop players, how they hold players to high expectations and high standards. For me was really eye opening. So and then moving now to the people that I'm learning from now, Johnny Roach, Simon Nee, Daniel Gutierrez, the guys that I'm learning from at Red Bull. It's just I think every experience, every step of the way, you get to learn from others. You get to take what you like. You get to realize where your shortcomings are. I go and watch the 17s. I watch Johnny Rhodes, and just the seamlessness of how he runs his training sessions. And I go, man, I need to be better at that. And then picking his brain and learning from others and being vulnerable and being in the room and going, yeah, I really don't understand this because this is why. And I think learning the why from each individual for me has been the biggest reason, the biggest acceleration in my development is asking why. And being around those guys, it's really helped, and I feel very lucky to be in those offices and hearing the discussions. One guy we had at when I was at Barcelona, Dennis Silva, who's now he was the juvenile A coach at Barca. So essentially he was the third in line, right? At Barca B, he was the 19th coach, and he would come to Arizona and he would give the presentations. And one thing I loved is there's so much theory, that goes into that, but he was so practical. He was so practical in how we use the theory. I learned so much just listening from him. And okay, this is our idea. Okay, now how do we translate that to the game, right? So he had a big influence on me, and then of course watching Sean McCafferty do it is another. When I was in Barca, I could just watch and say he had such a way of connecting with players and the relationships that he built with the players. You can tell when players really trust a coach and really want to learn, and it's all about those relationships. So yeah, again, long-winded answer there, but a lot of people who have influenced me, and I feel very lucky to be in those rooms and listen and learn. So yeah.
I think it shows. Obviously, you've had a good journey so far, and hopefully that will continue with the experiences and the type of people you come across. But listen, Chris, really appreciate your time. Fascinating to hear about all the work you guys are doing, and hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.